everyone, and thank you for joining me again for another edition of HM Exclusive Interviews. I am your host and editor-in-chief of Hype Magazine, Rae Ashe, and today I am joined by none other. How can we roll him in on this red carpet? He is a director, producer, an entrepreneur, an innovator, a great father, all-American dad, as a matter of fact. He is a humble brother. He is a traveler. He's actually put together some of the best content that we have out there right now. And you're going to find out why. We have Mr. Hashitashi, Mr. Samadhi.
Hashitashi, I like that. Hashitashi.
Thank you, sir, for joining me today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy. You guys, when you hear more of what he has to say to you, you'll understand why I said world traveler. So thank you for number one. Thank you. So Samad, before I go into what I have to ask you, I just want you to kind of run down what it is that you do in a gist, if you can, with all that you do.
It's really hard to put in the gist, but I like to put everything under the umbrella of being an entrepreneur. First and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur. And I think for the sake of this conversation, this interview, I will focus on the fact that I'm a film and television content creator, content producer, financier, distributor, and overall, all around consultant as it relates to the trajectory of the film and television industry, especially from the independent side and the global side. So I like to look at ownership, intellectual property ownership. So that means when you create content, you still own that content. You create deal structures that allows you or your company to still own the intellectual property. So 10 years down the line, you're still relicensing content that you created 10 years ago and you're still monetizing it, right? Versus the traditional way where you go out, you pitch something, you pitch it to a network or a studio, they go ahead, if they decide to finance it, typically they own it, right? You take your fee, you get to brag and take a credit and get to say, hey, I did this or that, but you don't own anything. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. Everybody has their thing, but I'm just telling you why I approach it from a entrepreneur's mindset, and that's been my strategy since film school in 96, 97, all the way till now. Okay, so we can dive into it a little bit more, but that's in a nutshell, I'm an entrepreneur.
Yes, you are. But more importantly, let's start off like when you said you graduated or you finished film school in 97. Now, growing up, we are from the same place, native in North New Jersey, correct?
I'm from North New Jersey. That's correct.
Yes. So growing up, what inspired you? Something you had to see a movie? Was it your surroundings? What inspired you into wanting to be in filmmaking, an entrepreneur, period?
Well, I come from a line of entrepreneurs. My father's an attorney, but he's always had his own law firm since as far as I can remember, right? So I grew up in his law firm. I had other entrepreneurs in my family, and it's just in me. I never had a regular job. I'm a licensed barber by trade initially, and I used to rent my chair. Renting my chair led me to owning my own shop. Owning my own shop led me to being introduced into real estate early on, and that there's been no turning back. I'm still in real estate to this day, but I want to say back in 95, I bought my first property, and I've been flipping and developing real estate ever since. And that was just a natural progression. Through real estate, I got into the restaurant business. I had a restaurant in Newark, New Jersey, and that was very successful. Then I had one in Harlem, USA, 125th Street. And the one in 125th Street, it wasn't the same Harlem it is today, let's just say, right? You can't find an abandoned brownstone in Harlem today. But back then, every block outside of 125th Street, majority of them had abandoned brownstones. And so therefore, that meant there was not enough foot traffic at a certain point, which meant the restaurant started to suffer, which meant New Jersey was taking care of New York, which meant stress, which meant I wasn't happy, which meant I was looking for the next chapter. One of my managers who I had running my New Jersey restaurant had resigned because he was going to film school. And, I supported that. I want to say 18 months later, I run into him by happenstance at the post office one morning before going into New York. And he said, "Oh, it was the best experience ever. You should try it." Now, I've always been creative. I just didn't know how to tap into it. My mother's a movie buff. Maybe I'd get my love for movies from my mother. Now I probably realize that's probably the case. My brother's a movie buff. We love movies, right? So I've always been creative, but didn't know the rules of engagement and never had a clear enough head to even figure out how to tap into that until I ran into my former manager of my restaurant 18 months later. And he told me it was the best experience ever and that I should try it. And at that moment, I was looking for the next chapter because life is all about chapters. If you ask me, you need to break up your life, right? You do this, you do that. And I'm not saying be all over the place, but you have to keep moving forward until you find what feels right for you, what you're passionate about, and what you're good at. And when your passion meets commerce, then you're on the right path, right? So I made a phone call that day to the school. The school told me to come in the next day. I went in the next day and I was just like, okay, let's give this a try because I was definitely tired of the restaurant. So I sold the restaurants. I got out of the restaurant business, still was in real estate. I still had my shop. And once I was finished, I was the only Black kid in the school. Okay. I guess he was the manager, the guy who had managing the shop prior to, he probably was the only Black guy in the school, but he was out. So now I'm the next only Black guy in the school. And, we had to do a project, and you would think everyone else who had resources came from families of means, and you would think they would be able to complete their thesis, but no one was able to complete their thesis because at the end, the school gave you film equipment. They gave me a 16 millimeter camera. They gave me all the lights, all the sound equipment, everything you can imagine for a week, free of charge to go finish my film. So I took that film equipment back to Newark, New Jersey. At that time, no one ever made a movie in Newark, New Jersey. So I had grandmas, people's aunts cooking chicken for the set. I had drug dealers donating cars. Just everybody just wanted to give something. It was just like, how can we help? And it was fascinating. And I brought that equipment back to Newark, finished this project, completed my thesis, and I was the only one in my cohort that completed anything.
Wow.
Because I was an entrepreneur, all I needed to know was the rules of engagement. I'm a natural producer. I can produce anything I put my hands on. I don't care if it's building a house or finishing a movie or whatever project I set out to do, I will always finish it. So that is my God-given talent. I know how to put pieces together, people together. I know how to make something happen. So all I needed to know was the rules of engagement, understand what I'm into. So that's why it was easier for me to put it together. And it was much more difficult for all these other people. No one completed anything. I think one person had a portion of their film done, but not completed. So, and I just ran with it ever since. I think Master P had made that movie Bout It, Bout It. Do you remember that movie, Bout It, Bout It? Yeah. He made Bout It, Bout It. Bout It, Bout It was out in the street while I was in film school and while I was finishing my film. And I was like, okay, I'm about to bout it. When I'm finished with this thing, I'm putting it out. And that's what we did. And that led from one project, led to the next project, to the next. That really helped, make him a household name. And so when I was finishing my film, I said, okay, I'm putting it out the exact same way. So I packaged it on VHS tapes and I sold it. I sold it to the bootleggers, wholesale. The bootleggers had no reason to bootleg me because I sold it to them wholesale.
Movie. What
I,
is it?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I'm too embarrassed about it now, uh, but regardless of it, it went out. And then later on, I did something else called Comedy Only in the Hood, which was a sketch comedy thing. Think of the Chappelle Show, but it was long before the Chappelle, anybody else. That went out on DVD. And then we went back and we made another film called Dirty Game. And Dirty Game was turned out to be a cult classic. I mean,
Wait a minute. Was that with KK?
yes, yes,
And Laquan?
yes,
I went
exactly.
to school with Laquan. See, that's how I know.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
hosted a TV show in a radio show with KK.
Wow, exactly. That's a cult classic. That
That's
film, I met almost everybody in the music business from that film. A lot of my Hollywood relationships that got me into Hollywood in terms of, that was the reason I went to LA for that film to get a deal for it, and so a lot of relationships I still maintain from that movie, which was really cool.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
That movie, I remember one time I was in Target. You know, they have the different setups for the CD, and I saw it there. I was like, oh, I had already had it, but it was the fact that I saw it there. I was like, okay, see, it's like it's one. Yes,
Yeah.
it really is. That was awesome.
Thank you.
But I'm still wondering. But I noticed producers and directors, their first project, they don't want anybody to see their first work, which I understand. Ava DuVernay said the same thing. She was like, no, it will never see the light of day. You'll never know it.
I can't even watch Dirty Game now. I mean, but first of all, I have a problem. I can't, I write a lot of scripts. I can't watch anything or read anything that I do. So if I write something, if I write a script, I'll give it to you to read. I'll give it to somebody else to read and get feedback. Mm-hmm. And then I might get feedback and I'll go in and I'll do some surgery, right? But I can never read it straight through because I'm going to keep correcting it. So I'll never just be able to read it straight through. But when it comes to things that I've visual content, I can't watch it. I can't.
Got you.
Like I couldn't listen to this interview once it's done. If you send me the link when it's done, I won't watch it. So that's just my own. Huh?
But speaking of which, coming from an entrepreneurial background and creating passive income. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I will tell you. It's an interesting time to be a parent. You try to reconcile how you were brought up with how you're raising your children in this day and age, right? So you say, okay, I grew up hard. I mean, my parents did a great job. I'm not going to sit and say, oh, we didn't have this, we didn't have electricity. I'm not going to give you that story. But nonetheless, I grew up in the heart of Newark, and we had to deal with all of the things that comes with that. Okay? Fights every day at school, to you name it. Just everything you can imagine. And but there were morals through the hard upbringing. There were things that made me who I am today, right? But as a parent, you say, wait a minute, okay, I have more access, more means. My kids won't be exposed to the dangers and the crazy things that I've been exposed to, right? So you try to protect them and you try to shield them and you try to give them things that you wish as a kid, because I still feel like I'm a kid. I still, literally, I watch people get old in front of me. I still feel like I'm 25. I feel like I'm 25. I know I still look like I'm 25, but I think I'm 25. But so what happens is you try to take kids, you try to do for your kids with things that you wish you could experience as a kid, right? But you also try to prevent them and shield them from the ills of the world. And what happens is and this is not just my kids, this is extended family, people's kids who I know, we all saying the same thing. The kids grow up without an edge. They grow up without an edge, and because they're growing up in a phone society, a social media society, and access to, it's hard to impress kids. So things that we would be fascinated about, it's like, okay, yeah, sure, dad. You know, it's so.
I
So what
do.
I guess what I'm saying is, what I realize is you can't raise kids the way you were raised, and at the same time, trying to raise them a bit differently does come with some setbacks. And
Mhm.
so if I was a kid, if I no, because I don't want to say anything like my father didn't expose me to certain things, but if 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 my father were me in this day and age, or I was my father when I was young and had access to the things that I have access to, I would be a sponge. I would be all over me. Take
Mhm.
me, expose me to this. And I think what happens is um, you want to expose your kids to things and help them build a network, because it wasn't until I was a certain age that my Rolodex is crazy, but that's years of cultivating relationships, right?
Mhm.
So ideally, you want to take your kids and like, okay, you want to roll them into something where they can have an easier time and build a network or build upon your network. But what happens is, because we raise these kids in such a sheltered way, they don't understand the value of what you're trying to give. And
Yeah.
you can explain it all you want. You can,
Yeah.
it's not just like, hey, you explaining it, but the because they didn't see struggle, it's hard to appreciate. So that's a work in progress. But in terms of how I try to set up things and structure things, in case when I die, the show goes on. So yes, that's what generational wealth is. We don't know what that means typically in our community. We say it a lot, but what does that mean? What does that look like? What does that look like? Does that look like, okay, yes, I'm making some money, and if I'm making money, then everybody's good. Well, are you set up? What happens if you pass away? Does everyone know how to continue
Mhm.
things? Does everyone know where your assets are? Does everyone know where are your contracts? Who owes you what? What do you responsible for? Does everyone know all of that stuff? You know, are all your debts paid, or do you still have money coming in? Is that routed to an account that some family member can't go and just pillage it as soon as they have control over it? Is it set up for the show to go on, the bills to still be paid, for the company to still grow, dividends to still be made, or the college tuitions put up somewhere, you know, and when your son or daughter turns 21 or 25, and if they've demonstrated this and this and this, do they have some seed capital to start a business to keep things going? Do you have a succession plan for the businesses that you worked hard to create so that can go on if you die? That's what generational wealth is. That means when
Mhm.
you die, the show still goes on. You see other nationalities. They say, "Oh, we've been in business 100 years, established in 1901, and the great grandson is running the business." That's generational, but we don't set up for that, and it's okay because we started far behind in the finish starting line, right? So we're just now trying to. Some of us are just like, okay, all right, we okay. We have to
Right.
start now, and they're like, okay, they're way over there. Now we just got to catch up, but no one's
That's
told us.
right.
So I'm not too hard on us about
Mhm.
why. I understand the why. We understand slavery, we understand Jim Crow, we understand crack era, right? Mass incarceration, we understand all the pitfalls. But now that we know better, we do better, right? And so now what do we do? I say it all the time. People get mad at me, but it's the
Mhm.
same concept, because a filmmaker just wants to make a film. They want to go to Sundance or Cannes or ABFF and be able to say, "I did this or that," right? And they're happy. That's the end game for them. But
Right.
someone who's thinking content creation, someone who's thinking content producer, someone who's thinking IP ownership is synonymous with generational wealth. That's the point. I told you I came into it that way. I'm still in it that way. because if I pass away 10 years later, 15 years later, they want to buy my library or they want to relicense something, my estate can do that.
Right.
So
But that's the mindset.
that's the mindset, and that's where the energy needs to go. Otherwise, I mean, you're just basically working for a paycheck and a credit.
That's
And
right.
and then again, there's nothing wrong with that. To each his own. I'm talking to you from as a black man, as someone who didn't have a roadmap, and to finish the starting line, I was miles away before the starting line. I had to work just to get to the start line, then race everybody. You see, so my priority is a bit different than someone else, and I have children I'm responsible for. I have family I'm responsible for. So, everything counts. Time is money. My energy is important, very important. These days in this day and age, I can't waste. It's more valuable to me than money. I can't waste it. I can't spend it. I can't spend life force on the wrong things. So,
Right.
but all of that, again, I say it's all wrapped under the entrepreneur's mindset. And when you think of an entrepreneur, you have to think of how does the show go on when you pass away. So that's what I think about. It's not about me or what red carpet or what car or what lavish thing I can do. It's really about how do I keep building and building and building, and everything that I build has a way to continue without me. That's because we all passing through. Nobody makes it out alive, right? You know that saying. So what are you going to do with that time? And that's how I look at things. For it's bringing companies into Africa, creating jobs, bringing technology into Africa, creating jobs, bringing certain technology and stuff from Africa into the US or other markets, right? And so marrying opportunities with like-minded people on the ground in Africa. And that could be as simple as film and TV, just to put it in context here again, right? So I played a big part initially in West Africa, in Ghana, initially with elevating how music videos were done. And that sounds small because I was already there on business back and forth. And one day I was watching I was with my uncle and we were waiting to get picked up, and it was some music videos on the television at a hotel, and they were terrible. It was, I mean, you're talking about, this was in 2008 or so, 2000, I want to say 2009-ish. But the videos looked like they were from the 80s, like the technology was bad. And I said, it's horrible. This is what I said. And he said, well, do something about it. He said, that's also your background. Don't complain about it. Do something about it. I'm sure people in Africa would love to collaborate with you and learn and elevate what they're doing through your efforts. And they'll be value added, he said. Be value added. And I never forgot that. And I said, wow. He said, you're here enough. And I said, you're right.
I just wanna love, we don't gotta fuck. You can be on the other side, maybe we can meet. But hey, you know what I mean, I'm just tired of all this bullshit. I just wanna love, we don't gotta fuck. You can be on the other side, maybe we can meet.